There's one habit that will sabotage your success. And here's the thing. Most people don't even know it's a habit. Napoleon Hill, who wrote this book, Think and Grow Rich, this book was introduced to me when I was 22 years old. I was a struggling entrepreneur. I'd taken $200. I bought a used vacuum cleaner, a mop, a bucket, and a wringer. I started going door to door selling commercial cleaning services, asking people if I could be their nighttime janitor. One of those days when I was out cold calling, I walked into a guy's office who gave me this book, this exact book. Now, when he gave it to me, it was brand new. It didn't look like this, but I've devoured this book. And he said that if I would just commit to working with him for free, he would mentor me for free. Like I'm doing this video for you for free. It's one of the reasons why I do videos like this. It was given to me. I'm giving it to you. He said, if you did this and if you just did what I showed you to do, the way I show you to do it for 1 year, it won't be my fault that you're not a millionaire. I said, I'm in. I knew my way wasn't working. Up until that point, I had failed out of school. I never made it past the 10th grade. I was a I was a roofer making $4.10 an hour. That was the minimum wage. In other words, legally, they couldn't pay me anymore. But the truth is, I wasn't worth much more than that. And then at 22, with $200, I started going door to door. And I was cleaning toilets. I was cleaning toilets in restaurants and bars when he gave me this book, full of struggle. And I had a habit that was killing me, and I didn't even know it. I had a habit that was ruining all of my chances for ever being successful. And I never even thought of it as a habit. See, I thought habit was like smoking, and I did that. I thought a habit was nail biting. I thought a habit was, overeating. I thought a habit was drinking. I never understood that we could have a habit in our thinking. And when Patrick began to take me through this book, there's 13 principles in the book. One of these principles focuses right in on this habit, and it's the chapter on desire. He says, analysis of several hundred people who had accumulated fortunes. So Napoleon Hill, he's researching. This is back in the 1920s. He's researching really successful people. Carnegie, Rockefeller, Schwab, Edison, Ford. You get the idea. He says analysis of several hundred people who had accumulated fortunes well beyond the $1 million mark. Remember back then, $1 million would be equivalent to being a billionaire today. Disclosed the fact that every one of them had the habit of reaching decisions promptly and of changing those decisions slowly if and when they were ever changed. People who failed to accumulate money, without exception, had the habit of reaching decisions very slowly. Let me think about it. And then, if they do make a decision, they change those decisions quickly and often based on the opinions of other people. Do you know, today, one of the most frustrating things for you as a sales professional is when you go in and you're talking to people and it comes decision time and they tell you, well, let me think about it. I'm not really sure right now. Let me talk to the boss. Let me run it by the board. Let me check with my wife. Let me check with my husband. It's got to drive you nuts. I know it drives me nuts, and I understand. There's two reasons why people tell you, let me think about it. There's two reasons why people don't make a decision when you're in front of them. One is that you have failed to create enough certainty in their mind for them to make the decision. Second, they have a habit. Most people do. Most people are not successful. Most people are average. Do you know that 1% of the world's population earns 98% of all the wealth in the world? 1%. Do you know that 1% of the American multimillionaires, pay 54% of all the tax. 1%. And then we've got people running around saying the rich don't pay their fair share. I'm part of that 1%. My income level and my net worth has me in the 1% club. And trust me, I pay my fair share. I've paid tens of millions of dollars in taxes. But see, most people are average. Most people can't make a decision. They've created a habit of making decisions slowly. And if they make the decision, the first sign of struggle, the first sign of something's not going right, they change their mind. They quit. And when they're making the decision, my goodness, they can't take a risk. They're afraid to take a risk. They run around asking everybody else what they think they should do. You can't even go to lunch today with somebody and ask them, what are you going to get? And they, well, I don't know. What are you going to get? Like they can't even make a decision about what sandwich to get without asking other people. It's a really bad habit. And it's a really bad habit for salespeople, because as a sales pro, you have to make decisions. You've got to be quick when making decisions, and you have to be able to make those decisions that are in harmony with what your true desire is. What is your goal? Now, if you haven't watched the lesson on desire, make sure right after this, you go back and you watch that, because one of the reasons why we fail to develop the habit of making decisions is because we've never really made decisions that were in harmony with a defined goal, with a true purpose, backed by the desire, the all-consuming obsession to have whatever it is that we want. We would never think to delay the decision. I remember after selling my commercial cleaning company, so I started that business in 1988. I was 22 years old. When I was 40, in 2006, I sold the company. At the time I sold it, it was the largest sale of a privately owned commercial cleaning company in the Southeast United States. The only other company that had sold for more money than mine was a big international franchise. So when I sold that, I decided one of my dreams, one of my desires, one of the ways that I defined success was that I would live on the ocean. And so I went over to Jupiter Island. I was developing my speaking business, so I knew I would be traveling. So I wanted to buy just a really beautiful condominium there, so that I could, when I was in Palm Beach, I would be able to have a beautiful place on the ocean. And then when I traveled, most of my travel was international. I could travel, and I didn't have to worry about a big house on the ocean. I had a really nice condominium with, all the maintenance. And I walk in, and as soon as the realtor opened the door, I take one step in, and all I see is glass straight across. I could see from the front living room, I could look over to the right, and I could see into the one master bedroom. And then when I looked to the left, off to the left was one of the other bedrooms, and it was all oceanfront. True oceanfront. If you walked out the front door, the back door of the building, and you took 85 steps, your feet were in the water. You could see the tracks of the sea turtles that would nest up on the beach. This place was on the ocean. Now, I'm not really fond of heights. I don't like to be high, but I wanted to be able to see the beach. So I was on the third floor, just as I had written it out and dreamed about in my book, my dream book. I took one step in and I saw that view, and I said to the realtor, "I'll take it." I said, "You'll take it? You haven't even seen the place." And I said, No. I've been here 1,000 times. And over to the right was this extended bar that stuck out all granite. That granite was the exact same granite that I had been journaling about and dreaming about for years in my journal book. I said, "I've been here 1,000 times." I said to him, "I know where the Christmas tree goes." He said, "But you haven't even seen it." I said, "Trust me, I've been here. I know it." He said, "Okay, what do you want to offer?" I said, "What are they asking? I'm paying full price. Just whatever they're asking, I'm buying it." cash. Just tell them it's a cash offer, close in 10 days. He said, but don't you want to negotiate? I said, I don't want to negotiate. If I negotiate, I risk losing it. I want this so badly. I would never risk losing. The person who wins in every negotiation is the person willing to walk away without a deal. My desire for living on the ocean was something that I dreamt up when I first got this book. Now, when I was journaling about living on the ocean, I had no idea how I would ever do it. To be honest with you, I didn't even really believe I could. But I suspended the belief, and I kept imagining what it would be like. And I would journal and I would write about it. I would fill books like this and notebooks. I don't know. I must have a dozen of them. And one of the things that I had developed along that way, because I was so crystal clear on what I knew I wanted, that when I saw it, bang, I made a decision. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to ask permission. I had already made the decision, and I had developed the habit of making the decisions that were in harmony with my purpose. That if what I wanted, and if this decision could lead me in the direction of my goal, could advance me to where I wanted to, I would make that decision. He says, the majority of people who fail to accumulate money, the majority of the people who fail to accumulate money sufficient for their needs are generally influenced by the opinions of other people. They permit the newspapers and the gossiping neighbors, gossiping friends to do their thinking for them. Opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth. Everyone has a flock of opinions ready to be wished upon anyone who will accept them. He says, if you are influenced by opinions when you reach decisions, you will not succeed in any undertaking, much less in that of transmuting your own desire into money. If you are influenced by the opinions of others, you will have no desire of your own. Think about that. Think about that. Think about the decisions. Think about the decisions that you make. Are the decisions you make influenced by other people? Are you out seeking permission from other people? Now, when I say permission, I mean, are you so unsure and so lacking the confidence in your own judgment and your own discernment that you're asking other people who probably don't have the results you want? Now, look, I'm not talking about mentorship here. I've had mentorship my entire life. I would never go without it. I mentor probably 200 people personally, one-on-one. So when I sit down with them, they're asking my opinion. But they're asking my opinion because I have results in the area that they want to grow in. Most people are just asking people their opinion out of habit. Follow the teacher, follow the leader, listen to what the other kids are doing, listen to what your brother says, listen to what your sister says. It's part of our programming our whole lives. Most people are afraid to make a decision for themselves. Most people live their life by opinion poll. Most people make decisions to please other people. Well, I don't want to upset them. I don't want them to be mad. Them being upset and them being mad has nothing to do with what do you really want. And for most people, they can't answer that question. I've been coaching professionally since 2006. That's 20 years. Arguably, I've done it at the highest level with the biggest names in my industry, on the biggest stages. I've coached professional athletes, Olympic athletes. I've coached billionaires. I've coached high school dropouts. I've coached people at every single level. And here's what I can tell you. One question I always ask is this. Tell me with as much clarity as you can what it is that you want to achieve. And the way that most people tell me what they want is by telling me what they don't want. Because they've never sat down and made the decision to get really clear about what it is they want. And if you don't have really clear sales goals, if you can't tell me exactly what you're hoping for this next year at the time of this recording is December 2025. If you can't tell me exactly what you want to have happen by this time next year, you haven't done the work. You've got a weak habit around decision making. You will never be able to make clear decisions. You will never make decisions quickly. You will always surrender those decisions once the going gets tough and the results don't seem to be panning out. When it really takes you to dig deep and go beyond the resistance that you're facing. In this book, there's a phenomenal story titled 3 Feet from Gold, a true story that talks about a gold prospector that was digging and digging and digging, and they had some successes, and then all of a sudden it seemed like things didn't work, and he asked everybody in the company what they thought they should do, and they all thought that they should just pack it up and go, and they did, and they sold it for pennies on a dollar. The guy who bought it hired a new geologist, got all new exams done of the ground, and right where they had stopped, 3 feet from where they had stopped digging, he struck a new vein of gold. One of the biggest that had ever been struck. 3 feet from gold. Chances are you're 3 feet from gold. Chances are right now, right on the other side of the disappointment you have, right now on the other side of the frustration you have, right now on the other side of the struggle that you're in right now, I'm telling you there's probably a huge opportunity. But if you're going to run around and ask people what they think you should do, not only will you not achieve what you want, you don't deserve to. Creating wealth, particularly in sales, is not for wimps. It's not for casual goal setters. You've got to be so clear about what it is that you want. And you have to fall in love with that idea. I knew when I wrote down in one of my first journal books that I wanted to live on the ocean one day. And then I started to describe exactly what I wanted to live. And I started to describe the kitchen, and I started to describe the balcony, and I started to describe the smell of waking up in the morning and being able to open up the windows and have the salt air come in and hear the seagulls. When I wrote that out, I was living in an apartment with 4 other guys in a 2-bedroom apartment. And we weren't living there because we liked each other. We were living there because it took all 5 of us to make the rent. You would never have looked at my life and said, oh yeah, one day, he'll be worth tens of millions of dollars. One day, he'll live on the ocean. No way. But because I was so clear and knew what it was that I wanted, I could make decisions very quickly. He says this, those who talk too much do little else. Those who talk too much do little else. If you talk more than you listen, you not only deprive yourself of many opportunities to accumulate useful knowledge, he says, but you also disclose your plans and purpose to people who will take great delight in defeating you because they envy you. If you're on a sales team, there's a pretty good shot that the other people on the sales team, they want you to do well, but not better than them. They want you to do okay, but not better than them. Even your own manager wants you to do well, but don't be better than his or her results. They still want to keep, they still want to, talk about their success in the 90s or the early 20s. They still want to keep that world record that they had set for the company. People talk a big game. They talk and they talk and they talk and they talk. But you and I both know in sales, the money isn't in the talking. The money's in the listening. And that starts with you, listening to you. What do you really want? Getting really clear about what you want. Getting really clear about what are your non-negotiables. What are the things that up until now you've been unwilling to do that you're willing to say, you know what, I'm willing to make a decision. I'm willing to risk failure. I'm willing to risk making the investment of time or money to improve my skill set. He says, remember that every time you open your mouth in the presence of a person who has an abundance of knowledge, you display to that person your exact stock of knowledge or lack of it. I can't tell you the number of times I've sat down to mentor and coach people, and people say, I know, I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know, Paul. No, I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I read the book. Yeah, I know. So you read the book? Yeah. Well, how long ago did you read the book? Oh, I read the book 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And you're still struggling? See, that's the knowing doing gap. You may know, but you've done nothing with it because you lack the awareness to do what you know. If knowledge would change the world, everybody would be skinny, rich, and happy. Everybody knows how to be skinny. Everybody knows how to be rich. Everybody knows how to be happy. We know what it takes. But do we have the awareness to apply it? Are we willing to make the decisions and stick by those decisions? As he says in the chapter on desire, are we willing to burn our ships? Most aren't. Most people will talk a big game. They'll tell you, I'll do anything. I'll do whatever it takes. And what they really mean is they're willing to do whatever is comfortable, whatever fits their current belief system. But the minute you ask them, do you cold call once a week? Like, do you sit there and wait for leads to come in? Or do you identify companies that you really want to work with? Companies that would really fit your profile of an ideal client that could pay you a really big commission. And do you have a list of 20 of those companies? And are you cold calling on them? Outside of all the other things you've got, are you working them? If you're in car sales, have you gone back and looked at the old book of people who bought cars 3 years ago? Whether they bought them from you or from the other, 100 salespeople who came and went and quit because they were unwilling to do what was necessary to be successful. So they've moved on. Now they're selling copy machines or something else. Have you ever gone into to the general manager or sales manager and said, look, I'd like to get a list of everybody who bought a car, 3, 4, 5 years ago and hasn't bought a new car since then. So I could cold call them and start a relationship with them. Give me the people who bought the most expensive cars that paid the highest commissions, and let me just work them. For most people, they don't even get the idea. That idea doesn't even occur to them. Not because they don't want and wish and hope to make money, but because they haven't made the decision to really do whatever it takes. And so they hear me say what I just said, and they think, you know what? Let me run that by everybody else in the office and see if it's a good idea. What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? And they live their life by opinion poll. He says this, the value of decisions depends upon the courage required to render them. Are you courageous? Are you bold enough to back up the decision? See, the value of the decision, is it a good decision or a bad decision? Well, I don't know. Are you willing to do what it takes to make the decision really work? Or are you going to give it some half-assed measure of effort? Most people don't play full out. Most people in sales play the game of sales not to lose. They're not playing to win. They're playing not to lose. They want to do just enough so that, they can continue to get leads. Just enough so they can, stay on the board. Just enough so they can get their commission. Oh, what's the bonus level? And I'll do just enough to get that bonus level. It never occurs to them to go beyond. It never occurs to them to create so much value in their sales position that the company's required to change the entire commission structure for them because nobody's ever reached that level of sales. People don't make those kinds of decisions. They don't make those kinds of decisions. I'll tell you what he says here. You will find only that there are laws of nature. There's 7 laws that govern the way that we think, behave, and create. Everything in the universe operates by law. This morning when you woke up, the sun rose in the east. It sets in the west. That's governed by law. Every single satellite, every single GPS today is still navigated by the North Star. Why? Because we can predict the North Star, because it's governed by law. Elon Musk is planning on taking us to Mars. When they've landed rovers on Mars and other things on Mars and on the moon, but think about Mars. Do you know that when they send those rockets to Mars, and we've got one on its way to Pluto, that they can time within the precision of a fraction of a second when the rocket will land, and within the precision of inches of where it's going to land. Why? Because we understand the laws that govern flight. We've uncovered all of the laws of the universe that function around creation. There are 7 laws that govern the way that you think, behave, and create. You think, create, and behave by law. Now, we'd like to think that, we're in control, but there are laws that govern thought. And he says, in your search for this secret method, he says, don't look for some miracle, because you're not going to find one. He says, you will find only that there are natural laws. And these laws are available to every person, not to just rich people, not to smart people, every person. These laws are available to every person who has faith and courage to use them. They may be used to bring freedom to a nation or to accumulate riches. Those who reach decisions promptly and definitely know what they want and generally get it. The leaders in every walk of life decide quickly and firmly. That is the major reason why they are leaders. The world has the habit of making room for the man or woman whose words and actions show that they know where they're going. Isn't that true? Isn't that true? NASA gave way to Musk, to Starlink. Indecision is a habit which usually begins in youth. The habit takes on permanency as the youth goes through grade school, high school, even through college, without definiteness of purpose. Have you ever stopped and listened to what some of these young people are graduating with their diplomas are in? And then they wonder why, when they get out of college, they've got $150,000 worth of debt, and they can go in and get a job making $50,000 a year because they bring no value to the marketplace. They would have been better off becoming electricians, plumbers, dance instructors. They'd have made more money. But they just did what everybody else was doing. What do you think I should do? I think you should go to college. What should I study? I don't know. I think you should study this or that. And so they did it. And 4 years later, they walk out straddled and buried in debt, no real skill, no real talent that brings value to the marketplace. And then they go into their 30s and 40s, and before you know it, they're stuck. They're buried in credit card debt. Maybe their family gave them some money. Maybe they start out with a small house, and that's it. They're stuck. It's the things that fill the regret of the 50 and 60-year-old. See, the habit of the indecision goes with the student into occupation he chooses. If, in fact, he does choose his occupation, generally, the youth just gets out of school, seeks any job that can be found. He takes his first place he finds because he has fallen into the habit of indecision. 98 out of every 100 people work for wages today are in positions they hold because they lack definiteness of decision to plan a definite position and the knowledge of how to choose the employer. Definiteness of decision always requires courage, sometimes very great courage. I want you to make a decision today. That you're going to really commit to getting better at what you do. See, you may have taken sales courses. You may have memorized scripts. You may know the strategy. You may know some of the market. But if you haven't really sharpened the saw on that, if you haven't really backed that effort up with a definite purpose, like when I was cleaning toilets, Cleaning toilets was a means to an end because I was cleaning toilets because I was going to live on Jupiter Island. I live 4 miles away from Tiger Woods, Celine Dion, and Bill Gates. 4 miles down the beach. There was no reason why I should even be in the same zip code of Tiger Woods, Bill Gates, or Celine Dion, let alone to be on the same island that they lived on 4 miles down the beach from them. That's not supposed to happen to a high school dropout. That's not supposed to happen to a janitor, a guy who cleans toilets for his life. What's he doing even living on the island, private island, not private, public island, but private in that all access to the beach is private. Private in that very few people make it to live on Jupiter Island. Look it up. I shouldn't have been able to be there. And yet I was. See, when I was cleaning toilets, when I was struggling, hiring people and failing and people quitting, people stealing from me, clients not paying me, all the headaches that you could have. Every failure necessary for a business to be successful, trust me, I made, and some I made 2 or 3 times just for good measure. But when I was doing it because it was back of purpose. I knew where I was going to go with such clarity. I had dreamt about it. I had written about it. I had joined mastermind groups. I had invested time and energy in growing myself and getting better. When I was 17, 18, 19 years old, when I would talk, I spoke like this. I grew up with a stutter. That's how I used to talk. I had to teach myself. I had to retrain myself in how to communicate. And today I get paid an unbelievable amount of money to speak for a living. If you were to go back to my school teachers, to the people who knew me in 10th grade and ask them, would Paul Martinelli be worth tens of millions of dollars? Would he be, one of the top thought leaders in his industry? Would he be living 4 miles away from Tiger Woods, Celine Dion, Bill Gates on an island just 4 miles down the beach from him? They said, no, Paul Martinelli will probably be living underneath a bridge. Paul Martinelli be, living in a park. He may live in a trailer park, but he certainly isn't going to, he's certainly not going to make it. And they would have been right to believe that about me. I believe that about me. I was going in the wrong direction and I was picking up speed when this book was placed in my hand. But the study and application of the principles in this book changed all that for me. I've built 8 multi-million-dollar companies. Those companies have generated over $1 billion. I've got clients in 162 countries. I've traveled all over the world. Like I said, got married in the Sistine Chapel, rented the Sistine Chapel, rented the Roman Colosseum privately at night. Just for me and my client. I don't know what it is that you want, but I know this. I know you want more. Now, in the description below is a link. And in that link, it'll take you to a video of a free teaching that I did on these 7 laws. Now, here's what I know. Less than 1% of the people who started watching this video are watching it now. So if you've made it this far, congratulations, you're already in the 1% club. But here's what I also know. 1% of the 1% will click on that link, put in their email address, get that free resource, and watch it. All I can tell you is the income difference between those that do and those that don't is significant. I know, because I was one of those people who made it to the end, who clicked on the link, who got the lesson, who watched the lesson, and then applied the lesson. I'll see you on the next video. Be well.